Welcome back once again to Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here trying to make the world seem a little more normal. And are we going to accomplish that tonight? Well, actually, maybe a little bit. Maybe. We actually might accomplish that goal tonight, folks, and I am actually happy for that. So let's get started right away with my guest who's going to help me try to achieve this. Dr. Margaret Cochran, who is a expert in people who have the ability to see the living after they're dead. Oh, they're dead after a living. Wow. Talk about getting that screwed up in your head. But yes, Dr. Cochran here actually wrote a whole paper about, a whole research paper, huge one, I'm sure, about what it's like to see ghosts and how it affects the human mind, which
Mhm.
I'm dying to get into this. So how you doing tonight, Dr. C?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. This is a topic I love talking about. So, but talking about it from the eyes of someone, the reaction of humans to seeing ghosts. I'm used to talking about ghosts in general, but humans seeing ghosts and what it does to them is a whole other topic we haven't really touched on this show. And I mean, I've talked to plenty of people who have seen ghosts, so this is going to be interesting. I think my network is going to love this one. So let's get a start right off the bat with the question I asked everybody at the beginning of the show. What got you into the paranormal spiritual world? What made you want to go down this path?
Well, I have been interested in things unseen since I was a child. And so when I did my dissertation, I decided that I wanted to see how other people reacted and felt and what that was like for them.
Well, yeah. So, but did you have any experiences when you were younger that made you want to find out about this, or did you grow up in a haunted house, perhaps, or similar?
Well, actually, I had experiences that for me didn't seem ghostly at all. I had a friend who was with me and would advise me and protect me and play with me and things like that, answer questions. Um, and then when I was around 4 years old, I became very, very ill and close to death. And
Ooh,
I came back from that experience very, very different than I went in. So that line between physical life encased in matter and life that is not bound by matter is a very, very thin one indeed.
it truly is a thin veil that, as we all know in this show. But so you had basically an NDE, like a near-death experience, basically.
Yeah, I did. It was more like what we refer to as a walk-in experience, where uh, there you can have a soul in a body, and then something happens, and then another soul takes that body over. And so the description, I mean, I don't remember any of that process, but the description of me before and after I got sick were like two different people.
That's interesting. I've only read about that in books. I never, I never actually have met someone who's experienced that. That's mind blowing in a way. Because I mean, one of my favorite authors actually who has been on the show when I first started the show. I think she was my first guest actually.
Hmm.
She has that as one of the plot lines in her books is that the main character or medium, if he's not wearing a special necklace that he got in Africa,
Hmm.
he can have spirits take over his body because they can sense he's a medium and they want to have his ability.
Hmm.
So to actually have someone do that in real life, that or have that happen to them in real life, I should say, that's mind blowing. Like,
Well, all I can tell you is when I came back, I was very serious, extremely empathic, and I had a lot of intuition. And those things were not things I possessed before I was sick.
interesting. So I mean, it makes sense in a way though, because when you the closer you get to that veil, the more you usually have your parts of your mind open and awakened that you don't have from birth. Because as everybody knows, as humans, we use 10% of our brain, if not less. Some of us a lot less, but we won't go into that. But
Well,
basically, we don't.
actually, that's not true. Actually, we use all of our brain all the time. We just don't always use it wisely. It's important to remember that there is intelligence and there's wisdom, and they are not necessarily the same thing.
Well, I agree. That's yeah. I mean, to be wise and to be intelligent are two different things completely. Someone who's intelligent may not be wise, and someone who's wise may not be intelligent. That just it kind of goes both ways.
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
So I
But as I
mean,
said, from my experience, although I don't recall anything changing, other than I was unconscious for a while, uh, I came back, by all accounts, a very different child than when I went through that experience.
which I mean, as I said, getting close to the veil like that would make sense that you come back different. And, and the empathic abilities part really is what fascinates me, is because I've been told by many mediums and psychics that I should be an empath, that I am on my way there, but I haven't quite awakened it yet.
Mm.
I don't know what needs to happen necessarily for that to happen, but hopefully hopefully it's nothing too bad. But I mean, we'll see eventually.
Well,
Fate has
some people,
oh
as they move into the empathic realm, do so gently. Some people have to be shaken rather hard to be able to open themselves in that way. So I have some interesting stories about people like that.
yeah, which I mean, hopefully I hope it's more the gentle side, but we'll see.
That'll
We'll
be up
see
to
for
you.
sure.
That will be up to you. You get to,
Well, I need,
you get to determine how all that's going to go, whether you need a gentle nudge or a big push.
which I mean, hopefully it's gentle. I mean, I think eventually I think doing this podcast is what's going to lead me down that road because every time I talk to psychics, mediums, clairvoyants, clairaudience, you name it,
Hmm.
something more awakens, and I think eventually this is my destiny, this is my fate, this podcast, and
Hmm.
it's going to lead me there eventually. 200 episodes in, you think I'd be there already, but who am I to question what fate has in store for me? So it's
Well, everyone has to take their own time as they do their own work. And it's important to be patient with yourself, but also aware. And also, it's really important that if you are going to be someone who's intuitive, well, you already are, but if you're going to be more aware of that and use those skills on a regular basis, it's important that you take care of yourself physically. That this is the vessel, right? This is the meat sack we all live in, and if we don't take good care of that, then it can impair our ability to feel good on a day-to-day basis, and or develop powerful skills of one kind or another.
well, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, actually, that does make sense because the podcast started right after I had weight loss surgery.
Mm.
So that could have been the first step to that. And there probably are a couple more things I could do to help the body, quitting certain things like smoking, but we'll get there. When my kids are all older, maybe I'll get there. But right now, I kind of have, you know, the need. But eventually, hopefully, we'll get there. I'd like to. But
Well,
so,
addictions are distractions from our true selves, and when we are able to offload those, incredible development is possible. So I wish you good fortune in that journey. I hope you take that on soon.
which, hopefully soon. Hopefully. Well, a lot of things going on right now that's not going to happen right away, but we could someday soon. Hopefully, well, stop. I gotta get to a doctor and actually start talking about that. I've been thinking about it for a long time now, so it's kind of funny that it
Good for
comes
you.
up in this.
Oh, not funny at all.
Oh,
Everything
I mean,
happens for a reason.
it does. It's just funny the way fate works sometimes and synchronicities and all that. It just always amuses me to some degree. But so your dissertation that you wrote on this, how did you go about it? It's kind of what I'm curious about. Like, did you actually search out people who have experiences seeing spirits and ghosts, or was there just people flocking to you because they wanted to tell about their experience and how it affected them?
Both. Uh, Initially, I began by reaching out looking for people who have had those kinds of experiences. And then it was like a storm hit. Just people were coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, can I tell you my story? Can I tell you my story?" Because um, people are often afraid to talk about it. They're fascinated by it, but they're also afraid that people will think they're crazy or silly or not of sound mind. So they often don't talk about it. When they find someone who will listen without pejorative judgment and will accept them for who they are, you get to find out a lot.
which is which is very interesting. I mean, which I mean, it's interesting. I get that because I mean, even running this podcast, I have people who love coming to me to tell me about their experiences.
Hmm.
Every time I put on different websites, search for guests, it's always, I would love to be on your show. I would love to tell you about my experiences. No one, like, I don't get to tell people about it normally because most people are going to think I'm a weirdo. Most people are going to think that I'm lying.
Right.
Which on this show I always try to promote a whole area of no judgment. I'm not going to ever say that someone is lying because I've yet to meet someone I think is lying actually. So that's a whole another thing. I just have a feeling that they're not lying. Like it's just I could see it in their eyes, I could see it in their facial expressions. They're not lying to me. I could sense it. It's just not the way it goes. And I mean it's I don't know. From your experience, does everybody get affected differently after seeing spirits, or is it kind of a everybody gets in the same general mindset afterwards?
Well, there's a thing that we call a boggle threshold. And a boggle
Hmm.
threshold is when your mind just gets to the point where I can't take anymore. And what is true is everyone's boggled threshold is different. So some people can be hit with something very powerful and say, okay, this is powerful. I need to check this out. I need to move forward and move into this experience. And other people just go, ah, and run into the night, you know? So it affects people very differently from that standpoint. And then if they are able to stand pat and go through the experience, there are different ways that they interpret what happens. But for the most part, it's very positive.
I yeah okay. That's why I was asking because I kind of wanted to compare what I've seen and heard from the people I've talked to, and kind of is like most people are very their lives change for the better. It seems almost after they see a spirit for the first
Oh,
time,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's I mean maybe it's just the acceptance that there's more to this life than just our human coil. Because a lot of us didn't want to believe it. I mean, for years I didn't believe in afterlife. For years I didn't believe there was anything after being human. I believed we just rotted in the ground until we were worm food, which I now know is completely wrong. And I was a naive teenager, 20 something year old to think that at one point. But it's just the way we go through life because we all have that angsty period at some point in our lives where we don't think there's anything past us because we can't picture anything more than living on Earth.
Well, the funny part about it is that most religions and philosophies teach the idea that life is eternal and that there is existence after death. And yet, when we're confronted with it, we run screaming away and say, no, no, it must be evil. Something terrible has just happened to me. So it's a fascinating paradox that we live in this world. But for again, for most people who have actually gone through the experience, it was very positive. And it depends on what kind of experience you have. I mean, there are different kinds of hauntings, quote unquote. For example, there's a haunting with consciousness. um, I'll tell you a story about that. A woman had a child and she went in for a routine physical. They did blood work and her blood sugar came back 400. Now, mostly if your blood sugar is 400, you've got a lot more sugar than blood and you're apt to go into
Yeah.
a coma and die and all that kind of stuff. So she was very alarmed and she was supposed to go back to the doctor and get her insulin and get started on that whole diabetic process. And she went to bed that night very, very upset. The mom of the girl did. And so she was awakened in the night by something pulling on her great toe. And she sat up in bed, and at the end of her bed was her Uncle Joe. And he had on his yellow windbreaker that he always used to wear. And he said to her, and this is not her name, I'm making it up. He said
Of
to
course.
her, Joan, don't worry. It's just a mistake. Everything's fine. And she said, Uncle Joe, you're dead. And he said, I know, honey. I love you. I have to go. And then he disappeared. So she woke up her husband and she said, oh my God, Uncle Joe is just at the foot of my bed. And he told me everything was a mistake. And her husband said, you have lost the plot. You have gone around the bend. No, this is not okay. You need to go talk to somebody immediately. So in the morning, I got this panicked phone call from her physician. And so I sat down with her and she told me the story. And she said, what, do you think I'm crazy? I said, no. She said, what do you think I should do? I said, well, I don't do shoulds, but I think a good thing for you to do would be to take your daughter back to the lab and get her blood drawn again. You've got nothing to lose. You'll either find out her blood sugar is still very high, or in fact, it was an error. And she did go back and it was an error. And if she had started insulin, it would have killed her.
Which, see, that right there is a very helpful spirit experience. I
That's a
mean,
conscious haunting.
yeah, which I've heard of stories like that before where, well, true, not even stories, I don't like to call them stories, truths like that before, where the spirits come back to give us helpful information that we need to know
Mhm.
because we're about to make a very wrong decision. And, but I mean, they're all, and I mean, I live in a, and I feel the same as you. I hate that word haunted. I live in a possessed house. That's the way I prefer to say it.
Mhm.
The original owner of this house and his wife, as well as, from what I've been told, multiple other spirits like to hang out with me. I've been told crazy energy spirits drawn to me. I can't see them. I can kind of sense them. I can't see them though, so I don't know what to make of it. But it's not a it's nowhere near a poltergeist level. It's nowhere near any kind of level where we're disturbed in any way. They're just there. They exist. That's all we know. They're not there to. They don't talk to me, as far as I know. They don't try to tell me things. They just kind of watch. They're watchers, is the best way to put it.
Well, Hollywood aside, a poltergeist haunting is the least common. They're quite rare, actually.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I would imagine.
but
Otherwise,
but most of us have the power. We need to understand that just because people aren't in bodies doesn't mean that they're not the same energies that were once in a body. And if you have an energy in your house that you don't like, tell it to go away. Get out. I don't want you here. This is my house now. You need to go. Now, sometimes there are super stubborn kinds of energies there, and you may need a little assist from an expert, but for the most part, no. If you don't want somebody in your house, tell them to leave, just like you would any other unwanted guest. Uh, Now, some people become fascinated by this idea. And it's important to know that, there's healthy energy and there's unhealthy energy, again, dead or alive on either side of the veil. And if you don't keep yourself clean, spiritually speaking, you don't have good protections around you and you expose yourself to a lot of negative energy, you can get some bad juju that you carry around. So, not a good idea. Don't fool around with things you don't understand, whether they're
hmm
alive or dead. It's a really bad idea.
yeah. If you see a bear in your backyard, you think it's a good idea to go poke it? No, no. Don't don't go try poking something that you can't see that you don't understand. That's a whole nother ball game. I mean, God, the stories
Yeah.
people have told me about that, it's just you don't go and don't go challenging them either. That's the worst thing you could do. Like all those stupid ghost hunter TV shows where they go into the house and they're like, "Come on, ghost, face me!" Like, no, no, you don't want that. You're antagonizing something that you can't see and that has more power than you will ever have. No.
Well, it's again, I really detest those ghost hunting shows. Just FYI, mostly because
Same, same.
they're like all reality TV, and I put that in big air quotes. There's nothing real about them. You don't need to go hunting for ghosts in the dark. They don't care what time of day it is. That's all about people being spooky and putting flashlights under their chin and, you know, trying to make other people be scared. Um, okay, let's talk about the brain for a moment. One of the
Gladly.
reasons that the news is the way it is, and various kinds of programs are constructed the way they are, is because they want to stimulate your amygdala, which is a part of the brain that does emotion. And the amygdala, if it's regulated by your prefrontal cortex, which is right here behind your forehead, you can reason your way through things. If you That's called top down stimulation. So if something happens and you think about it and it stimulates your amygdala, you can think your way out of it. If, on the other hand, you have bottom up stimulation where your amygdala fires, it'll bypass this entirely. And all of a sudden, you got people with conspiracy theories and running around and making accusations and being destructive in all kinds of really not good ways. And when people get into that frame of mind, they certainly are attentive. Once you've got someone by the limbic system, which is where the amygdala sits, if it bleeds, it leads, as they say in the news. Once you've got someone intrigued and enticed that way, then you've got their attention. But it's not necessarily realistic because you're doing a lot of feeling and not very much thinking. And that is a very, very, very dangerous thing.
Yes, 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 yes. You never let your emotions control you over your intelligence. That's just foolish. It's foolish. And I mean, yeah, I 100% agree. I, one, don't like reality TV at all. I think it's garbage mostly. There's a few exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, it's garbage. And I don't like the news either. I refuse to watch the news because, as a good friend of mine says, if you want to be depressed, watch the news because that's what they're there to do. They're there to scare you, and they're there to make you feel sad about the world we live in. They don't show you. They don't even show you the puff pieces anymore like they used to make you feel good about the world. Now it's just horror and gloom every 5 seconds with a new story. It's, oh, this is happening in Syria. This is happening in Israel. This is happening in Afghanistan. Like, it's just, yes, bad
Well,
things are happening, but they don't need to be exaggerated and thrown in our faces 24/7.
yeah, but you keep watching. And that's where your prefrontal cortex comes in. Now, there are some people who are more or less sensitive to amygdalic stimulation. So there are people who can go into anxious frames of mind more easily than others, and they're much more easily victimized, and it's harder for them to get control again. So they're much more likely to find themselves in a bad situation from their bottle of reflex being pretty low. I can't take too much, and then I've had enough. So we have to be sensitive to the fact that people are wired differently neurologically. Some of us have an easier time of rationalizing things than others do.
Which is, I mean, I know people like that. I don't want to name names on here, of course, but I know people like that, and their anxiety will be the death of them. I keep saying that to them. Like, I tell them all the time because you can't just be anxious about everything. It's not healthy. It's not a way to live because you're not going to live happy and you're not going to live long because you're going to literally worry yourself into the grave.
And it does do that. It's bad for your heart, your blood pressure, your immune system, pretty much you name it. But that's where, if you find yourself in a position like that, please go see a professional. Let them help you because you can regain control. Just because your amygdala is very sensitive doesn't mean that you are forever trapped in that cycle of anxiety. You can come back out of that and live a much more comfortable, happier life.
And exactly, and I wasn't going to say names, but since she wants to comment, Harley's been watching tonight, commenting a little bit. And I'm not showing the comments about your encounter, sweetie, because I'm going to get you on here eventually. I keep telling you that. But my co host for another show. But she says she worries all the time. And yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. People who worry all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I walk down the street and I can give a flying fuck less because nothing's going to make me worry that much. Like, everything always works out in the long run in my experience. So I know it's going to work out. I'll find a solution to any problem I come across sooner or later. It may not be the next day. It may not be the next week. It may be a month or two later. Or maybe a year or two later if it's that kind of problem. But guess what? I will find a solution eventually because I know that's how life works. We're not
Well,
handed
that's
things unless
great.
we're meant to find a way out.
That is great. That is great that you know that. And that's one of the things that we help people come to understand, that, they can live their lives differently. For example, I had a gentleman who he had a near death experience. and he was having quadruple bypass surgery. And but prior to the surgery, he was not a very nice man. He was abusive to his family, and his hobby was cockfighting. I
Oh
mean,
God.
yeah, it was pretty awful. He was in construction, huge guy. Anyway, so he went into surgery for this operation, and he coded on the table.
Of course.
I do hypnotic work in the OR, hypnotic
Really?
anesthesia. Yeah, and so this guy codes, and they tried everything. They tried everything to revive him, and just nothing worked. So they called it, and they were gonna roll him out into another room and inform the family and all that. And he sat up. He sat up. And I am not joking. The surgeon had to change his scrubs. I mean, he had been a surgeon for 30 years and he had never, ever seen a dead person sit up. So they put him back to sleep again, finished the surgery. Normally, after a big surgery like that, once the patient's stable, the surgeon does their notes and goes home. But the anesthesiologist stays with you to make sure you come up out of, the
Yep.
gases that they've given you. Well, this time the surgeon stayed, and he kept trying to wake the guy up because, of course, he's had now 2 goes with gas, right? So he's pretty out of it.
Yep.
So he finally wakes up, and he keeps calling out for Lily. Lily, where's the baby? Is the baby okay? And the surgeon kept saying, sir, there's no baby. You just had a surgery. You're all right. Everything's fine. So finally he wakes up, and the surgeon says, what the hell happened to you? And he said, well, he said, I was floating above my body, and I saw you guys working on me. And then I didn't want to watch anymore. And so I floated away, and I saw this big ball of light, and I just wanted to go to the big ball of light. It was like it was pulling me. But as he did so, he described places in the hospital that he'd never been. And one of the places he went through was labor and delivery. And he saw this mom in labor, and there was a little ball of light, and the little ball of light came out of the mom and was coming toward him. And he thought, oh, the little ball of light's going to go with me to the big ball of light. And then all of a sudden the mom said, Lily, don't leave me. And the ball of light went back. So he went on. And when he finally got where he was going, there was a voice, not a female voice or a male voice, just a voice. And the voice said, well, what did you do with it? He saw his whole life again and felt his whole life again, not only from his perspective, but from the perspective of everyone he encountered. And it was quite eye-opening for him, as you might imagine. But he felt such love, and he felt so good. And the voice said, you have to go back. And he said, no, please, please don't make me go back. Please let me stay here with you. And the voice said, no, there's more that you must do. And the next thing he knew, he said, I found myself back in my body, full of pain and feeling awful. So he said to the surgeon, could you just check on the baby? And the surgeon, of course, said, oh, all right. So he called labor and delivery, and he identified himself. He said, I know this is unusual, but if you had any deliveries in the next, last 3-4 hours. And I said, oh yeah, only one though. It was a touch and go, but baby Lily's okay. So the guy who had the surgery said, could we send the baby some flowers? I mean, this is not his character at all. And the surgeon said, sure, I'll take care of that for you. So when he came back for his post-op check, he said to the surgeon, I need help. I don't know what to do. So I can't live like this. And he said, well, I know this lady, maybe she can help you. So he came to see me, and he said, Doc, you got to put me back like I was. I can't live like this. I cry at toilet paper commercials. All I want to do is hug my kids and kiss my wife, and they look at me like I have 2 heads. He said, I don't know what to do. I don't like my old friends anymore. I don't want to do the old things I used to do. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, if you want to go back to being the person you were, you don't need my help for that. You know how to walk that path. But if you want to become the man that I believe that you are becoming today, that I can help you with. So he did. He jumped in. We worked together for a while. And now, in his spare time, as I said, he was a very big man. He has these huge hands. He works in the inner city, and he massages babies that are born addicted. because it's not very nice for them when they come into the world
I'm sure.
withdrawing. And the nurses love him. He can walk into a room in the NICU and everything goes quiet. All the babies are just so relaxed. And he'll massage them, and rock them. And he's an amazing human being. But that's not the human being he was when he left. Again, that veil is very thin. And when you cross that line, it's pretty profound and your perspective changes dramatically.
Which, I mean, yeah, I mean, as someone who has chickens and roosters, I cockfighting is one of the things I hate most in this world.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I literally have a rooster right now in my garage that we just rescued from a woman whose neighbors were complaining that she couldn't keep it anymore. So we rescued it. This
Hmm.
woman put a choke collar, literally like a Velcro thing around its neck to try to
Oh
stop
my,
it from crowing as loud. And I mean, of course, as soon as we saw what it was, the second day we had it, we took it off.
oh,
Bruises all around its neck from the collar.
oh.
So I mean, we've been treating it. It has scaly legs, so we've been treating that too. Because
Mm.
apparently, where it was living in the back of our house in this kind of like this not in a city necessarily, but like the suburbs outside of a city, like it's just like we've been rescuing like this rooster. I literally will hold it while I'm giving it treatment, and like it'll just like put its head against my shoulder
Mhm,
and cuddle
mhm,
up to me. It's just
mhm.
it's heartbreaking. Like I can't imagine
Thank
anybody
you.
that is okay. It's I mean I have dogs too, and it's the same thing with dog fighting. I can't imagine
Of course.
anybody that would make animals fight each other for entertainment. I mean, yeah, back in the day they used lions and tigers and elephants and gladiator to fight each other to the death. And okay, yeah, lions and tigers are more predatory animals. That's what they're kind of meant to do, like to in some degree, not horribly brutally murder like that, but still, ancient times people were stupid, but or less. I should say they were less educated than we are now and less intelligent. But I mean, it's
I
just any
wouldn't
kind
go
of
that far if I were you. I want you to
well,
think about what we do with guns in this country and the gladiator sports that we have and how we pay people to harm one another. It's nothing's changed.
oh,
Unfortunately, we just have bigger, nastier, more harmful weapons than we used to have, and we can do more damage than we used to do. And that's the difference between intelligence and wisdom, isn't it? You can be intelligent and come up with a great new weapon, but do you have the wisdom to be able to keep from harming people with it and put it to some good use? That's the question.
sounds like that sounds like some Tony Stark question right there. I'll say, but uh,
Well,
but I
let me
mean,
say
yeah,
this.
it's
Let me say this to all of you that are listening. One of the things that I've learned over the many years that I've been in practice and the many different kinds of people that I've worked with is when you leave this life, you are going to see your life like a movie. You're going to feel everything you felt and everything everyone else felt that you encountered. And the first time I heard that years and years ago, the little hairs in the back of my neck went up, and I thought to myself, wow, what's my movie going to look like? Because I'm going to relive every moment, and I want to have a good movie. I don't like bad movies. I don't like violence. I don't like sadness. I don't like cruelty. I don't like any of that. So it has given me a completely different perspective about how I conduct myself each moment in each day. That's a slice of my movie. And what's it going to look like? How's it going to feel?
well, that's actually a really good way to look at life because I mean, it's just I mean, it's the same as saying like think about how other people see you. Think about how if you if you blow up on a waitress at a busy restaurant because she got one thing in your order wrong and you're just having a bad day and it pissed you off, think about how everybody else in the restaurant is going to view you after that. Think about how everybody else is going to be shaking their heads and muttering to each other about you because you just made a scene over the stupidest thing in the world, and you just probably made that poor waitress go out in the back and cry or made her have a horrible night some way or shape or form. Maybe you pushed her back into doing something that she was trying to get out of. Who knows? You could have affected someone's life horribly because you had one bad moment. That's why I try not to let I try. I mean, I'm not perfect. I'm never gonna say I'm perfect. I mean, I try never to let bad moments like that get to me. But I mean, I'm human. I err. But it's just that's the way
Well,
people should view life.
I like what you're saying. It's important to get rid of that word try because it's like trying to lose weight or trying to quit smoking. It's ambiguous. It doesn't mean anything. But understanding when you do and when you don't do is what allows you to pay attention Keep focused on what your objective is and say, okay, I missed it there. Does that mean I want to change my goal, or does that just mean I missed it and I need to work harder next time? So do and not do is a really good way to look at your actions, even your emotions.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at what you're saying. I'm laughing because you literally just gave me a Yoda quote in a different form. Do do not. There is no try. Like it's like it's just that's all that's going through my head the whole time you're saying that. But
Some
it's
of
I mean
my
it's true.
some of my patients call me Yoda, actually.
I love it. I freaking love it. And but it's true. What
Yes.
Yoda said in Return of the Jedi is 100%, or Empire Strikes Back. Ooh, I might just piss off all my Star Wars fans, but that is something that's very true. I mean, I was my one teacher in culinary arts at high school used to always use that quote. Like whenever we used to say we're trying to do something in the kitchen, he'd be like, "Do it."
No.
He's like, "There's no trying. You do it or you don't do it."
Mhm.
He's like, "You either do this perfectly or you're not doing it." So it's just, I mean, it's a basic metaphor for life because you could try to be a better person, but no, you should just be being a better person. Just do
Well,
do what you want to do.
there aren't mistakes. There's just lessons. Lots
Yeah,
and
I agree.
lots and lots of lessons. Guys, I've had lots of lessons in my life, I can tell you, and I'm grateful for every one of them. I'm grateful for all the teachers that I've encountered, and some of them were in the study that I did, and certainly people that I've met since that time. One of the things about a experiencing someone who is not in a body in whatever form they come is it's called a felt experience. And one of the things that people get very excited about is, oh, how are you going to prove it? How are you going to prove it? Well, uh, when you write a dissertation um, for your PhD, there's something called a defense where you have to go in front of um, the Spanish Inquisition, so to speak, and they can ask you anything they want, and you have to be able to explain what you did. So, I did not set out to prove that there were or were not ghosts. My purpose was simply to see how people's lives were affected by them if they believed that they'd had that experience. And someone said, well, how can we take anything that you're saying seriously? You can't prove it. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever loved or loathed someone? Well, yeah, he said. I love my grandmother. I said, oh, that's nice. I said, prove it. He said, well, I visit her every Saturday and I eat her apple pie, which is really bad, but I don't tell her that. And I always get her something nice for Christmas and I take her to doctor's appointments. I said, yeah, you could be a liar. Maybe you're just after the money. Maybe you're just doing what's socially acceptable. Why would I believe anything you say? You can't prove or disprove a felt experience. In other words, it's what's happened to you. The question is, what are you going to do with that experience and how is it going to impact the rest of your life? Will you make it something that helps you grow or will you be defined by it and be stuck? That's the choice you have.
Which honestly, it makes sense because I mean, we've all felt stuck in life, and we've all felt like there's no way out of the predicament we're in at some point or another. And the only way out is up. I mean, the only way out is up, and you have to do it. You can't rely on other people. You can't say, "Oh, someone's gonna come along and care about me enough to help me." Guess what? They may not come, or even if they do, they might get you fully out of it. They might help you up a little bit, but as soon as they leave, you're falling back down that wall you climbed out of. So it's all about projecting yourself. It's all about projecting yourself to where you want to be. And
Well, the other thing
I,
is sometimes people don't listen well. You
oh
may have
God,
observed that
yeah.
from time to time. One of the people I encountered, his son had died, sadly, and he went back to their favorite restaurant just to kind of be there and be in that space again. And he was thinking about him. And so this guy comes out of the kitchen, one of the kitchen helpers, and he says, "Are you?" Again, I'm changing the names. "Are you Joe?" He said, "Yeah." He said, and the man said, "Do I know you?" He said, "Nope, nope, but this voice is in my head and it won't leave me alone. And it said I had to come out here and tell you, I love you, Dad. I'm okay." And so the guy, He said, "What? What?" He said, "I don't know what it means, mister. The just wouldn't leave me alone till I came out here. So I'm going back to the kitchen now. Bye." So off to the kitchen he went. And the man came to see me and he was furious. He said, "Why would my son go to a stranger? Why did this person who never had any intercourse with my son of any sort come and give me this news? Why didn't my son come to me?" I said, "Well, chances are good he did come to you, but you couldn't hear him. You
Yep.
were absorbed in grief. You were so focused on your pain that he could be screaming in your ear and you wouldn't be able to hear or understand him." And that happens when we're in bodies. People try and give us messages and we can't hear it because of the state of mind we're in. And it also happens when we're out of bodies too. So
I
know
mean,
that the people you love are always around you. Know that they're always there with you, doing everything they can to support you and help you through this experience. And if you ever have the opportunity to work with a gifted medium, at some point. And yes, there are charlatans, but there are also some very, very gifted people out there. They will tell you there's a translation process that happens. The energy signature when you're not involved with matter is very different than when you are involved in matter, because matter is much heavier and thicker. And so there's a translation process between those two energy fields that can sometimes be a little bit confounding and take someone with particular skill to be able to interpret. But if you have that experience, those with someone who's really gifted, they'll reference things. They know things about your life. They saw the wedding, they saw the christening. They know you're struggling about money, but it's going to be okay. Um, so, or as one woman in my study, her mother passed and she was struggling with her relationship, and her mother was a smoker like you. And she, one of the ways that she would show up is her daughter could smell the cigarette smoke. And
hmm
one day she went down to the laundry room and she was feeling particularly despondent. And who was sitting on top of the washing machine? Her mother, smoking a cigarette. And she said, "Honey, it's going to be all right. You just have to calm down and change your attitude and stop blaming him for everything. It's going to be okay." And she just dropped the laundry and stood there with her mouth hanging open. She said, "I love you." And then she just kind of faded. And she said, "It was the most remarkable experience. I felt so loved. I felt so safe." And I realized, I went to therapy and I realized, yeah, I had been blaming him for everything that was wrong. I wasn't really communicating with him. I wasn't really being present with him, just like my mom said. So, mom to the rescue once again, dead or alive.
I mean, oh, okay. One, you don't gotta tell me people don't listen. I got kids. I know people don't listen. But oh God, they don't listen at all. But I mean, it's just,
Oh, they
I know
do.
people.
They do.
Yeah, they're choosing to ignore
They're
it. Yeah,
little
I
sponges. Of course they choose, yes, but believe me, all the stuff you say, and I hear it years later when they come to me for therapy. I hear about what dad said and didn't say, what dad did and didn't do. Dad says don't do this, but then he's doing it. Oh yes, they see and hear everything. As the old saying goes, the walls do indeed have ears.
they do. I mean, they do, and it's just it's yeah, people don't listen in life. That's one of the biggest things. I mean, how many people go to their doctor on a regular basis for their yearly physical? Doctor tells them every year, same thing. Oh, you should drop 20 pounds. You should slow down your drinking. You should quit smoking. I'm like, do they ever listen? Normally not, no. Not unless it becomes a major issue, and then that's when they listen because they know their life's now in jeopardy. That's when people start to listen, is when there's going to be a true consequence if they don't listen. Same as drunks who don't listen until they get a DUI. That's when they start listening because their life is now impacted heavily because of what they did. So, I mean, it's just, I
Well,
mean,
that's
and
why.
I'm not judging anybody here. I just want to put that out there. I'm not judging anybody. Everybody do you, but
Well, but that's I love what you're saying there, because that is the power of the word should. It's a shame word. And it suggests to people that there's some mystical standard that only if you adhere to that, then your life will be fine, which isn't true. It's very, very important when you talk to someone about something serious that you do it in a Socratic way, a questioning way. For example, if someone is drinking to excess on a regular basis, you, rather than saying you shouldn't do that, you should give up drinking, you say, where do you think that's going to take you? Where do you think you're going to go if you keep ingesting that much alcohol? And then we say, I don't care. I'm going to keep doing it anyway. Okay, you have a right to make that choice. But once you've asked that question, it's the technique is called ruining the drunk. Once you've asked that question, and you're not the person who is the addict isn't fooling anybody anymore. Everybody knows what they're doing. It's like telling, scolding someone for gambling or smoking or doing any other recreational drugs. It's not going to work. But you can ask the question from a loving place. Where do you think that's going to take you? What do you think that's what's going to happen? You've got people that love you. How do you think it's going to impact them if you're not around anymore? Those are the kinds of things that make people think and consider other options.
Yeah, I mean, most people, there are always going to be those hardheads who are never going to listen to anything,
That's
and
true.
they're stuck in their ways until, like your experience you talked about, until they have a massive NDE or something near it, and they're gonna at that point, that's when they'll get their awakening point because it's
You're
just going to be,
absolutely right. You can
I
have
need
a
to
tool or
change.
a two by four, either way.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, my grandfather's a good example of that. He was not the nicest man in the world, though I've been told his spirit likes to hang around me. But he was not the nicest man in the world. He always was kind of a dick to me. But
Mhm.
my father used to always tell me that he used to smoke cigarettes like crazy when he was younger. And then one day he was on his way home from work and he coughed up a big black chunk of something.
Ooh,
He didn't chew tobacco, so it scared him. It scared the life out of him because he just was like, "What the hell did I just cough up?" Like, he's like, "Is it part of my lung, or I mean, I don't know what it is, or is it just like a huge ball stuck in my lung?" Like, it's just it's what made him stop smoking. He literally stopped smoking the next day because it took something like that to scare the living crap out of him. And yet there are other examples, like my other grandparents, who had to be basically forced to stop smoking by their kids saying, "You're not going to be allowed to take your grandkids if you smoke in the car with them anymore." And
good.
they both quit. They both quit smoking pretty much cold turkey after that because the fear of losing their grandkids in their lives is what it took.
Well, another way to look at it is that love is the most important thing in the world. And you'll do things for love that you might not do for any other reason. And quitting smoking in those cases is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, trust me. Love made me do many things over the last 7 years I never thought I would do in my life or stop
Hmm.
doing in my life, and it's got to be priorities. It's got to be what comes first, and after a while, the things that are just fun to do are not the things that are gonna hold you when you're upset. They're not the things that are gonna comfort you when you're feeling sad. Those
Hmm.
things are temporary comforts. They're not permanently there.
Hmm.
That's the way you gotta look at it.
Yep.
And I mean, makes sense. But since we're getting closer to the end here, I gotta ask this: do you possibly have a anybody you worked with who actually had a true poltergeist experience?
I'm trying to think about it. I don't believe that I can't think of anybody that I have actually worked with that's had a poltergeist experience. Again, I've had people who have experienced, as I described it, conscious hauntings. I've also had people experience uh, things like orbs and ectomists and stuff like that. I've had people experience what are called repetitive actions where you'll go to a location where something traumatic has happened and you'll see it enacted again at a certain time every day or evening or whatever.
Yeah,
And it's like a film loop.
like
There's
the
no consciousness to it.
a residual haunting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like the famous Crybaby Bridges or the famous hitchhikers who got hit by a car story where they're in this if you go to this road at this time of night, you'll see this woman hitchhiking. Do not pick her up
Mm.
because it supposedly won't kill you. Like it's it's like I mean there are those that actually exist. I mean I've heard of Crybaby Bridges where those actually exist, and if you go and flash your high beams at this time of night, something will happen. Every time it happens.
Well, the other thing that you have to be careful about is that some people are more easily suggestible than others.
Oh
I
god,
also
yeah.
have to be a clinical hypnotherapist as well, and so I understand the power of the mind and how it can make wonderful things happen, or horrible things happen, depending on, how you're set up. So if you've been told something over and over and over and over and over again, yeah, you're probably likely to experience that. Put another way, if you have a parent, for example, who says, "You're a loser, you're not going to make it, nothing is going to go come of life, la, 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 la," you have that in the back of your mind now, and that's a belief you have, and you will tend to interpret the world in that way. If you change the belief, your life can change dramatically in terms of how you go forward. Same is true of being suggested that, oh, if you go to this place at this certain time, you're going to see X. And maybe you will, and maybe you won't. But there's also, things that can happen to your temporal lobe in your brain. Your temporal lobe is the part of the brain that does memory, auditory interpretation, visual perception. One of the things that we look for when we investigate a so-called haunting is we check to see if there's a standing sound wave in the area. A standing sound wave can create hallucinations. And the sound wave is the fluctuation is such that you cannot perceive it auditorily, but it affects your temporal lobe, and so you'll see something like in your peripheral vision, something gray will float by, or you'll just have a really bad kind of feeling. So there are a number of different things that we check for: aberrant electrical activity, things that can affect the brain in subtle ways that we don't understand, that may be causing you to have those kind of experiences.
Exactly. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, same as when we're kids, if we think our room is haunted when we're kids, if we think there's a ghost in our room, we look at our chair with some clothes on it, and we may see a ghost every time we look at it in the dark.
Sure.
But it's just something we put into our own heads, and eventually we believe it because it's just always been there in our heads, and it's something. It
Mm-hmm.
becomes a regular. It becomes a constant. It becomes a constant, and once something is a constant in your head, it's hard to get rid of that.
Yes.
You have to literally confront it to get rid of it.
Yes.
You got to be that brave kid who goes and turns on the lights to see. Oh, it's just a coat and a hat on a chair. But
Hmm.
I mean, what kid didn't have monsters underneath their bed or monsters in their closet? But at least at some point, I mean, we all had our parents look underneath the bed at some point to see if there was monsters there. But I know I made my dad do it for years. But that's also because I was reading Calvin and Hobbes, and I thought there really was monsters underneath my bed. but
Well,
but they didn't talk back to me.
there's that
So
lovely story about the little monster whose mom is reading him a bedtime story, and she says, "I think there's a human on top of the bed," and he's really scared to go to sleep, so his mom has to help him with that.
yeah, I actually have not heard that one. That's kind of funny. but that's that's funny. That's like the reverse Big Bad Wolf story. But
Exactly.
it's all how we look at it. Well, before we wrap up, I'd like to ask this question to a lot of professionals. If you had to give people, the world, one piece of advice, what would it be? What is the best advice you could give to the world to help them live a better life? And hello, Linda. Thank you for watching.
Well, two things. One is to remember, no matter what anyone said or done, that you are a beautiful and loved human being. Some of the people who love you, you can't see, but they're there and they love you. And the other part is always ask yourself, what would I do if I weren't afraid?
That's beautiful right there. That's a sentiment and a half because the spirit world is always watching, and there are always gonna be those in the spirit world that truly love you. And yeah, Harley just said it. I need to hear that tonight. That's a message that I hope a lot of my listeners go back to this episode and just listen to that part of this episode all over and over again. Like, if you need that message, you got a voice recording of it. There you go. You're welcome. But I mean, it's true. It's just there's more. There's always more support in this world than we think there is. There
Yes.
always is, and that's the bottom line. And in my very Jerry Springer-esque way, that's how I'm going to end this episode, for my part at least. But I want to thank Dr. Cochran for coming on because it's been an amazing episode. I mean, that hour flew by, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. So I thank her for coming on. And tell them, Dr. C, where can they find more about you? Where can they find anything else you've been on? Just basically promote yourself to the fullest. And Linda's right. Linda's right. That's what they say. There's eyes and ears everywhere, and yes,
Yeah.
there is.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again for having me. And you can find me on my website at drcochran.com. You can also find me on YouTube. Wisdom, Love, and Magic is the name of my channel.
Which is I actually was looking at that website earlier today, and that's the perfect combination right there. You need all three of those in life to get by.
I
So
think
I
so.
love that. I love that combo. And all my listeners, all my watchers, you know where you can find me. You're watching me now, so find me there. Listeners, if you don't know by now, 200 and something episodes in, I lost count. Shame, just shame, but I forgive you. I forgive you because we all need love. So I forgive you, but check out the outro. You'll hear where I am once again if you don't remember, or you're new. If you're new, go back like 230-ish episodes and go listen. I need the listens. So, and this episode will be coming out somewhere in the future. Where it's gonna come out, folks, as you all know, I'm baking episodes for a reason. You can all find out the reason in some point in the near future. But until then, just know I'm baking episodes. So this will all come out in the future at some point. Hopefully next couple months, I'm thinking, but we'll see. And and yes, it has been a wonderful show. Thank you, Harley. Appreciate it. And one last time, I'm gonna thank Dr. C for coming on because it's been an absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this interview for weeks, and I was not disappointed in the damn near slightest. So I love it. Till next
Be
time,
safe and
everybody.
be well.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. Have a good night, everybody.